okay. Move back.
Britain is burning again. January 2026. Since April 2025, protests against immigration have taken place across the UK, some of which have led to violent disorder. At least 41 police officers have been injured, and over 180 people have been arrested. 41 officers injured, 180 arrests. In Epping, a crowd of young men surged forward and around police lines outside the town's asylum hotel, shrugging off a cloud of pepper spray to break past the cops and attack left-wing counter-protesters. Surged, shrugged off pepper spray, broke through, attacked. The volume of hotel protests began to increase in the aftermath of a series starting in Epping on the 13th of July, which repeatedly ended in disorder. Repeatedly, disorder. Protests occurred across the country with disorder in cities including Bristol, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle, everywhere. Police have arrested 16 people since protests flared last week outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. In one demonstration, 8 police officers were injured, 16 arrests, 8 injured, 1 demonstration. Riot police surrounding the small group of counter-protesters as bottles, eggs and flour were thrown at them. The town's high street blocked off for many hours, as police were directly attacked with many of their vehicles being vandalised. Britain 2025, where protesters storm police lines, where officers fall injured, where cities erupt, where violence spreads, where chaos reigns. But before we expose how extremist protesters have repeatedly overwhelmed police across Britain as asylum hotel demonstrations turn violent and authorities struggle to contain nationwide disorder, that police warn could explode into civil war, let's be honest. Mainstream media won't tell you that police commanders at national level placed 3,000 riot police on standby to deal with anti-migration protests at around 20 hotels, that the unrest was not just a troubling one-off, but a signal flare showing how little it takes for tensions to erupt, or that police fear Britain threatens to break into chaos. That's why we built British Front Media. Subscribe now for coverage revealing Britain's descent into disorder. Reason number 1, violent protesters repeatedly stormed police lines in Epping, breaking through pepper spray attacks to assault counter-demonstrators as 8 officers sustained injuries and vehicles were destroyed. In Epping, a crowd of young men surged forward and around police lines outside the town's asylum hotel, shrugging off a cloud of pepper spray to break past the cops and attack left-wing counter-protesters. Young men surged around police lines, shrugging off pepper spray, breaking past, attacking. What happened? A second protest took place against the hotel for asylum seekers in Epping on the 17th of July, attracting hundreds of demonstrators, mostly local residents joined by some far-right activists. Hundreds. A separate counter-protest from Stand Up to Racism took place outside Epping tube station. However, they later converged with the initial protest at the hotel, which had been peaceful until that point. Then, disorder ensued as clashes occurred with counter-protesters with riot police surrounding the small group of them as bottles, eggs and flour were thrown at them. Disorder, clashes, riot police deployed, bottles thrown, eggs, flour, violence. The town's high street was blocked off for many hours as police were directly attacked with many of their vehicles being vandalised. Directly attacked, vehicles vandalised. Hours, casualties. The Assistant Chief Constable of Essex Police said 8 officers had suffered minor injuries whilst 2 people had been arrested following the protest. 8 officers, injured, 2 arrests, 8 injured, 2 arrested. Numbers don't match. Total arrests? Police have arrested 16 people since protests flared last week outside a hotel housing asylum seekers in the town of Epping. 16. Since protests started, the hotel itself was also damaged. Property destroyed, police injured, vehicles vandalised. Chaos. Epping. Reason number 2. Over 180 arrests and 41 injured officers nationwide as protests erupted across Bristol, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle, with disorder spreading to multiple cities simultaneously. Since April 2025, protests against immigration have taken place in parts of the United Kingdom, some of which have led to violent disorder. At least 41 police officers have been injured and over 180 people have been arrested. 41 officers, 180 arrests, nationwide. Since April, where everywhere. Protests occurred across the country with disorder in cities including Bristol, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester and Newcastle. Bristol, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, major cities, all hit. Scale, 246 events including protests, counter-protests and incidents of disorder took place, of which 88 were deemed significant, with many resulting in disorder. 246 events, 88 significant, many violent. By the 22nd of January, 2025, the disorder had led to 1,804 arrests and 1,072 charges, the majority of which were for serious public order offences. 1,804 arrests, 1,072 charges. Serious offences, that's from 2024 riots. Now 2025, at least 41 police officers have been injured and over 180 people arrested. Starting again, building, spreading. The volume of hotel protests began to increase in the aftermath of a series starting in Epping on the 13th of July, which repeatedly ended in disorder. Repeatedly, disorder. Pattern. Northern Ireland 2. A series of riots in Northern Ireland in June 2025 led to over 50 arrests with more than 100 police officers being injured. 50 arrests, 100 officers injured. They were triggered by the alleged sexual assault of a girl in Ballymena by two teenagers who appeared in court with a Romanian interpreter. Triggered, exploded, violence. Reason number 3. Police Federation warns this is not a one-off but a signal flare showing Britain is ill-prepared as 3,000 riot officers placed on standby amid fears of civil war. The unrest was not just a troubling one-off, it was a signal flare, a reminder of how little it takes for tensions to erupt and how ill-prepared we remain to deal with it. Signal flare, not one-off, ill-prepared. Police Federation Chairwoman Tiff Lynch said this. Federation, warning, how prepared, not. Police commanders at a national level placed 3,000 riot police on standby, under the control of the National Police Coordination Centre to deal with anti-migration and counter-protests in England and Wales, predicting protests at around 20 hotels. 3,000, on standby, 20 hotels. Targets, training for what? In Epping, a crowd of young men surged forward and around police lines, shrugging off a cloud of pepper spray to break past the cops. Pepper spray ineffective. Lines broken. In the last year, we have heard more about the chaos that Britain threatens to break into. If order is kept, it will be imposed by methods learned at Gravesend. Chaos Britain threatens. Civil war preparations. The Met had seen protesters identify and target commanding officers during real demonstrations in order to disorientate the policing operation. Targeting commanders. Tactical. Organised. If protests become more violent, the force has other options. Police train with baton guns, a less lethal weapon designed to injure a target but which can kill if it strikes the head. Baton guns. Ready. Never used on British mainland. Yet. Training now. Though they have been fired in Northern Ireland during the Troubles and authorised for use at Notting Hill Carnival and Black Lives Matter protests, they have never been used to maintain public order on the British mainland. Never used until next time. Reason number 4. Far-right groups including Britain First and Patriotic Alternative organise nationwide, with Tommy Robinson drawing 150,000 to London protest where 26 officers injured. Many protests were organised or attended by far-right groups including Britain First, UKIP, Homeland Party and Patriotic Alternative, who have also been accused of spreading misinformation online. Britain First, UKIP, Homeland, Patriotic Alternative, organised, coordinated. Tommy Robinson, ex-convict and far-right campaigner, Tommy Robinson led a Unite the Kingdom protest this September in London, which drew between 110,000 and 150,000 people. 110,000 to 150,000. London, massive. Some demonstrators rioted, confronting officers and engaging in physical and verbal abuse that resulted in 26 police officers being injured. 26 officers injured from one protest. Robinson's reach. Robinson's posts on X received over 580 million views in the 2 weeks following the Southport attack, an unprecedented reach for a previously banned figure. 580 million views. 2 weeks, unprecedented. Since Musk's takeover in 2022, X reinstated previously banned accounts including that of Tommy Robinson, who had been removed for hate speech violations. Reinstated, amplified. Coordination, Operation Raise the Colours, coordinated by far-right activist Andrew Currian, through social media platforms including Telegram and Facebook, was identified as connected to the broader network of anti-immigration activity. Coordinated, Telegram, Facebook, network, organised. A Telegram channel sharing details about local protests quickly descended into making violent threats against named individuals and locations. At that time had almost 15,000 members. 15,000 members. Violent threats. Andrew McIntyre, a 39-year-old taxi driver who started the group, was jailed for 7.5 years in January 2025 for his role in instigating violence. 7.5 years. Instigating, via Telegram, organized, digital, nationwide. Reason number 5. Race hate incidents soared to record levels, with attacks including 9-year-old shot with airgun, 2 Muslim men beaten with tennis rackets, and Sikh drivers hospitalized. The Avon and Somerset police have noted the increase in race-related hate incidents in recent years. In 2024, a total of 3,774 incidents were recorded, compared to 3,150 the previous year, and 2,743 in 2022. 3,774. Up from 3,150, up from 2,743. Rising every year. Specific attacks. In York, 2 Muslim men were attacked with tennis rackets and sticks and subjected to racist abuse by a group of 15 balaclava-clad youths on mountain bikes. 15 youths, balaclavas, tennis rackets, sticks, Muslim men, beaten. In Bristol, a 9-year-old girl was shot with an airgun and subjected to racial slurs. The police are treating this attack as racially motivated. 9 years old, shot, airgun, racial slurs, child targeted. This past August, 2 Sikh cab drivers were attacked in Wolverhampton, leaving one man with broken ribs and the second man needing hospital treatment for bruising. Broken ribs, hospital. Sikh drivers. Random attacks. The rise in racially motivated attacks has made migrants and minority communities, including UK citizens, feel increasingly anxious and concerned for their safety. Anxious, unsafe, citizens, targeted. Britain 2025. Here's where Britain stands. 180 arrests, 41 injured officers nationwide. Protesters surging through police lines in Epping, shrugging off pepper spray, breaking through to attack. 8 officers injured, vehicles vandalised, High Street blocked for hours, 246 events across Britain, 88 significant, 1,804 arrests last summer, starting again this year. Bristol, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, all hit, not a one-off but a signal flare. How ill-prepared we remain. 3,000 riot police on standby, baton guns training, civil war preparations. Tommy Robinson, 150,000 in London, 26 officers injured, 580 million views, 15,000 member Telegram, violent threats, organised nationwide, 3,774 hate incidents, 9-year-old shot, Muslim men beaten, 6 hospitalised, children targeted, terror spreading. That's Britain 26, where protesters storm police lines and win, where pepper spray fails, where 8 officers fall, where vehicles burn, where high streets close, where 3,000 riot police wait, where baton guns train, where civil war looms, where 150,000 march, where 26 officers bleed, where 580 million watch, where telegram coordinates, where children get shot, where minorities hide, where terror reigns. Police prepare for war, protesters prepare for battle, Britain prepares for chaos. Not if. When, signal flare sent, message received, violence rising, order failing, Britain burning. Again,